Okay, welcome back. All right, in this session, we're going to go ahead and we're going to glue our servos in place. And I already have my servos set up. They're working fine. I have my control arms attached to them, and I have everything centered. If you want to take a look at one of our tips for setting up your servos and centering them, I'll provide a link to that video in the show notes. So we're going to glue in our servos, and we are going to glue in our wing support. Okay, so the first servo I am going to glue in is going to be the aileron servo. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little bit of glue on the corners and on the bottom corners and on the shoulder of the servo, because I don't want to get any glue in the channel where the wing is going to slot into it. Okay, that would get in our way. So I'm just going to put a little bit of glue in the four corners. It shouldn't take much to hold the servo in place. And then the other servos, rather than use screws to tie the servos in, what I am going to do is put just a little dab of glue underneath the two mounting tabs, and that way, if I need to pull those servos out later on, it'll be easier to do so, and it will also be a little bit lighter. Okay, so let's see. And make sure that I'm putting my receiver on the left-hand side of the plane, so I'm going to make sure also that I have all of my servo wires coming out of the left-hand side. And make sure you don't get any glue on your control arm. Okay, so that servo's in place. We'll let that dry, and I'm just going to put a little dab of glue right there where the wood is. Okay. That tab. And use the glue sparingly. You don't need a whole lot. Okay. I'll feed my wire through to the left-hand side. I want to make sure that my servo is pointing up, like so. Now, and you don't have to do all this at one time. I'm just going to cover all this in this segment. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put glue on either side of this tab right here, where this slides into the pocket on the side. On the bottom, underneath the corners of that tab, and on the other side. And then we're going to slide that in. And this is a part that is critically important. Okay? Because you got to get this thing completely level. You want to make sure that it's centered from side to side. It's a little bit narrower. That tab is a little bit narrower than the three layers of foam. So make sure that you get that centered, and then hold your fuselage completely vertical, and make sure that this thing is symmetrical on both sides. That from tip to tip you've got the same angle. Okay, and make sure that it's pushed all the way down into the slot. Otherwise you'll have a hard time slotting in your wing. So I think that looks pretty good. So I am going to let all this dry now for the next couple of hours, and then we will be ready to assemble our wings and our horizontal stabilizer into the fuselage. See you in the next segment. Welcome back. It is time to put on one of the wings. I'm going to do the left hand wing, and then I will do the other one off camera. So I'm just going to lay a bead into the channel. And this side. And then on top of the support. Okay. Messy. I think that does that wing. Now, that takes care of the wing assembly. I'm going to go wait for that one to dry, and then I will go ahead and put the other one in. And then I will come back and we'll put in the horizontal stabilizer. So, see you in the next segment. Okay, welcome back. I wanted to show you the carbon control rod and the different connectors that come with it. The one that has the U shape in it is the one that's going to attach to the control horn. What I'm going to do is it comes with a long piece of heat shrink, and I measured the heat shrink. It's just a little bit over 80 millimeters in length, so I cut it into 8 pieces about 10 millimeters each. I've got the control rod, the heat shrink, and the connector that's going to go on the control horn. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and attach this connector with a little bit of glue underneath the heat shrink and go ahead and heat shrink those so that they're solid. And then I'm going to tape all the control surfaces in the neutral position, and then I'm going to measure out and mark the control rod and the connector at the other end with the heat shrink, and get that to length and mark it exactly where it needs to be, take it back off the plane, and finish putting the glue on the other end and then shrinking the heat shrink. So that's the way I'm going to do it. I'm not going to do it on camera because these things are so small you'd never see them anyway because of my hands. So that's what I'm going to do in this last segment, and then the airframe will be complete. Okay, we are at the final step for completing our airframe by installing our horizontal stabilizer. I wanted to show you, I took just a couple of pieces of scrap foam from those rectangles of foam that the parts were attached to. I cut lengths of about 22 millimeters and put them right on the bottom edge of the slot where the horizontal stabilizer is going to go. I did that on both sides, just to make it a little bit easier to get the horizontal stabilizer level in the fuselage slot, and also to add a little more support to the elevator rather than just having one single layer of foam there to hold it. So there's a tip for you. I would suggest doing that because I think it's going to make it a lot easier. So let me lay down some glue, and I don't know if I'll be able to keep this in camera shot, but okay, there's that side. There's that side. Okay, so we need to feed it in from this direction because, and we're going to have some glue to clean up, obviously, when we slot this in. So get your squeegee ready. Okay, make sure I get the excess glue off of here. Oh, that looks pretty darn level to me. So now what I'm going to do is run a little bead right along the top on each side and right along the bottom where I put those spare pieces on there. I think I'm going to push this back ever so slightly. Yeah, that's better. Okay. We got very good movement of our control surface. Okay guys, that completes our airframe. So I'm going to let that set up, and then I'm going to be putting my control rods and connectors on, and then it'll be time to program the electronics, and of course that's going to depend on what type of receiver you have. So okay, this is the last segment before the maiden flight. Everything is complete. I have everything programmed in. Okay, so we are complete. We're ready for the maiden flight. I did have one problem after getting all the electronics installed in it. As you can see by the white servo on the top for the rudder, my rudder servo went out as soon as I got everything put together. Luckily, I had a spare micro servo to put in it. Otherwise, I was going to have to do a bank and yank with just elevator and aileron. But now I have a working rudder again. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the build tutorial on this little nano plane. As soon as weather permits, where I have no more than 2 or 3 mile an hour wind, I will be taking it out to the field and performing the maiden flight on it. So stay tuned for that. Please give a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to check out our Patreon site. We have a lot of free content there as well. And I will see you in the air.